Okay, I'm recording now.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Camille Casaretti, the president of CEC 15. I'm very happy to be with you today for our second session of CEC 15's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Monday afternoon workshop. A very happy new year to those who are celebrating Rosh Hashanah. A good and sweet new year to you all. I want to thank you for taking the time to be on this call and to thank our CEC council members as well as District 15 Superintendent Anita Skop for supporting the development of these sessions. These DEI series is an opportunity for school community members and incoming families to learn about efforts surrounding advancement and diversity, equity, and inclusion in District 15 and throughout the city. In some of our sessions, we'll have updates on the D15 diversity plan and or the Subdistrict 3 elementary school rezoning. I would encourage you to share the information you receive here today and ask your friends and school community members to participate in these ongoing Monday afternoon sessions. Each of our district schools has a diversity or equity committee. Please let them know that they are welcome to attend these meetings and share their best practices with us at any time. We plan to host meetings every Monday afternoon from 1 to 2 p.m. for the next 7 weeks, ending on November 16th. No sessions will be held on Yom Kippur or Columbus Day. I will just drop our session topics in the chat and we'll do a quick review. In our discussion last week, we learned about work that's being done at the Department of Education across New York City schools on a citywide level with the support from our district office on a district-wide level and with work being done on a local level in our elementary schools to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in our schools. A copy of the video from last week's session can be found on the CECD15.org website. Each of these sessions is independent from one another, so feel free to drop in when you can or take the time to look at the videos afterwards. Today's session will focus on early childhood, social emotional learning, and inclusive classrooms. Our guests today include Ms. Cynthia Lascano, the District 15 Early Childhood Director, who oversees the Little Brooklyn Pre-K Centers. We have Dr. Susan M. Green, Senior Administrator of SEL and Design, Office of Safety and Youth Development at the Department of Education, along with two people from Sanford Harmony, which is an organization that recently partnered with the Department of Education to provide support services for SEL, and Hallie Potter, Senior Fellow at the Century Foundation. So we're excited to welcome them to the call. Just going to follow through a little bit with the rest of these afternoon session topics. So next week, we're going to be skipping because of the Yom Kippur holiday, and we will continue the following week on October 5th with a review of the formative years, the influence of parents, teachers, and first friendships. In session 4, we'll talk about redirection and our ability to change patterns. Due to the pandemic and the closure of school buildings in the spring, many of our children have lost contact with their friends and have fallen into not great habits. So children are on screens more than ever before. We'll discuss strategies to redirect and reconnect with family and friends. Our ability and willingness to change patterns can make a lasting impact on equity for all of our students. We'll be discussing cultural diversity and how our differences bring us closer together. Our schools will be implementing a culturally sustaining, responsive curriculum this year. This incredibly important work will allow teachers and students to really get to know each other in ways that didn't exist previously. This fall, knowing students well will be more important than ever. Getting to know students on a personal level, understanding their background, culture, and life experiences, as well as creating a safe, trusting learning environment is the first step in re-engaging with students in this new year. Learning from each other and about each other will shape our young people and give them the foundation they need to succeed as citizens of the world. And understanding cultures will help us overcome and prevent racial and ethnic division. In session 6, we'll talk about appropriate settings and cooperative learning. We'll review special ed terms from the law and how they are being used more widely in conversations about equity. Cooperative and collaborative learning is gaining popularity for a number of reasons. It raises student achievement, promotes a positive self-image, and raises regard for others. Struggling students show great gains in this teaching model, while the majority of students perform just as well, if not better. When students notice the value of their input and effort in a group setting, they gain more control and a belief in their own ability. Social and work skills are embedded in this style of learning. It's a win-win for everyone. In our last 2 sessions of the series, we'll address moral imperatives, orientations toward helping others, and developing concepts of social equity. When children are young, they show behaviors that resemble the morally relevant behaviors of older children and adults. They start to judge acts as morally right or wrong later in childhood. We'll discuss the development of 2 phenomena central to morality: orientations towards helping others and developing concepts of social equality. We'll discuss our roles as adults in guiding our children towards a more equitable society. At this session, you'll learn how to be a threat to inequity. It's our responsibility to educate children for civic participation at every level, so that they and we come to see more committed, generous, and heroic actions as part of everyday life. In our last session of the series, we'll review research on school choice lotteries and their impact on education. There are various models used in these lotteries. We'll learn about the model that District 15 used in our middle school diversity plan and how community engagement and an admissions policy that mimics our district average is making a difference in the future education of our students. District 15 elementary school families are currently discussing a rezoning of 7 of our elementary schools in the northern part of the district. We're assessing admissions policies through an equity lens and with community participation. If you would like to learn more about the Participatory Action Research Project that engages all members of our school community, you can go to district15parproject.org, and I will put that in the chat as well. Okay. These Monday afternoon sessions are a place where you can learn about how you can support your child and how to make impactful changes in your personal life, in your family, and in your school community. The demands that are being placed on us are challenging and changing daily. Patience is what we all are striving for, but you have the strength to be a leader in this work. There'll be a lot of information coming out of these sessions, and you may have questions. Don't be afraid to ask. Feel free to use the chat feature if you want, or you can write to us at cec15@schools.nyc.gov. Dropping that in the chat as well. At this time, I would like to introduce Cynthia Lescano. Cynthia is going on her 2nd year as the Early Childhood Director for District 15. Prior to her position as our D15 Early Childhood Director, she was an assistant principal for the District 2 Pre-K Center and worked with Pre-K expansion to start the program in 2015. This is her 24th year as an early childhood educator and has worked in various roles such as K1 G&T, reading, recovery, teaching, before transitioning into leadership roles such as literacy and math coach and pre-K program site coordinator. Thank you for being with us today, Cynthia. I'll hand the floor over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Camille. It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to join District 15 community education committees in their commitment and work in informing our community and families about our district initiatives on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm going to be talking to you a little bit today about early childhood education and how this work how our work impacts these things. Okay, so it's important to, one of the things that I was thinking about is that it's very important to foster diversity, especially because Brooklyn is filled with culturally diverse families from all walks of life. I'm sorry, I have this mask and it makes it kind of difficult to speak. I can't take it off because I'm in the office with other colleagues. So as I was saying, we have these culturally diverse families all over Brooklyn, and because of it, we have a lot of times English language learners coming into our center and coming into our school building. One of the things that our early childhood education program does is play an essential role in preparing our young English language learners for success in school through interactions and modeling of language communication, both by teachers and their peers. Pre-K provides children with the opportunity to develop basic foundational skills in language and literacy before they enter kindergarten ready to learn. Young English language learners can begin to develop essential foundational skills even before they have developed strong English language skills. As a matter of fact, studies have shown that children who have had rich first language experiences seem to learn a second language such as English more easily than children who have had limited experience with the language they have used in their home since birth. Like other skills, children develop language along a continuum with many factors contributing to the language acquisition process. This is why the background knowledge that each child brings to the task of learning English has to be respected and acknowledged as part of the ongoing learning process. The way that we support this in District 15 is by providing families the option of dual language programs. The Little Brooklyn Pre-K Center, along with many schools in the district, offer dual language programs that provide instruction in English and target languages such as Chinese, French, and Spanish to English language learners and native English speakers. In our school model, students receive half-day instruction in English and half-day instruction in the target language. For pre-K, this work is done during morning meeting, in the practicing of daily routines, in learning songs, finger plays, in read aloud selections, and also in learning through play. Dual language programs not only teach students how to read and write in two languages, but fosters an appreciation and respect for different cultures. The other piece in terms of inclusion, preschool children with disabilities and their typically developing peers are all capable of learning, achieving, and making developmental progress. Preschool children with disabilities need specially designed instruction and related services designed to address their disability and ensure their participation in age-appropriate activities with non-disabled peers. Each preschool child with a disability has an individualized education plan called an IEP, which documents his or her individual goals, supports, and services as determined by his or her needs, strengths, and abilities. These individual supports, accommodations, and services are designed to assist a child to meet the goals in his or her IEP, as well as to achieve the learning standards. With the appropriate services and supports, children with disabilities can participate in pre-K experiences with their non-disabled peers and be held to the same high standards and expectations as those without disabilities. We're very fortunate that in pre-K, we are able to offer a special class in an integrated setting, or SKIS class, where pre-K students with and without disabilities learn and play together. SKIS classes have both a general education teacher and a special education teacher, as well as two paraprofessionals. The teaching team works together throughout the day to adapt and modify instruction and ensure the entire class has access to the general education curriculum. Research shows that inclusive settings promote academic growth, independence, and social emotional gains for both children with and without disabilities. Over the last year and a half, we were able to also offer special classes in pre-K. The Little Brooklyn Pre-K Center offers a 12-to-1-to-2 class where we have one teacher and two paras, as well as related service providers assigned to our school, which includes a speech teacher, an occupational therapist, and a physical therapist, to support students with IEPs and special needs. The special class services are provided in a classroom in which all children have individualized education plans and needs that cannot be met in a general education classroom. Special classes are taught by special education teachers who provide specialized instruction. Under the IDEA, children with disabilities should be educated with children who are not disabled to the maximum extent appropriate. In the Little Brooklyn Pre-K Center, we have 3 special classes, and students have the opportunity to interact with same-age peers during scheduled gross motor time, opera for kids program, dance, and the arts. So although they are in a special class, they also have opportunities throughout the day to be able to interact with other students in the building. So District 15's Early Childhood Program center on the whole child with a primary focus on understanding the ways children learn best, how they become involved in learning and acquiring knowledge, their physical well-being, meaning their health and ability to engage in daily activities, and their social emotional learning, meaning emotional competence and ability to form positive relationships that give meaning to children's experiences in the home, school, and larger community. Instruction also supports the development of communication skills, literacy, and cognition of the world, all through play. District 15 teaching teams base their instruction on the Pre-K Foundation for the Common Core and believe that all children are capable of learning, achieving, and making developmental progress regardless of economic, linguistic, and cultural differences or physical learning and emotional challenges. We know that children are active learners, which is why our primary approach to learning is through purposeful play. Teaching teams engage in intentional planning that promotes rich learning experiences that invite participation, involve multiple contexts, and engage the senses that help children explore their environments. Children learn best in the context of interactions and relationships with family members, caregivers, teachers, and other children in their immediate environment and in their community. Now, more than ever, family is a significant contributor to children's lifelong learning and development. Actively engaged parents in the early education of their children is essential to children's success in the elementary classroom and later learning. In this increasingly globalized and shrinking world, ensuring the healthy social and emotional development of preschoolers is now more critical than ever. Preschool children must learn to be aware of and comfortable with themselves and others, to recognize and manage their emotions. At this age, engaging in respectful two-way interactions with adults is as important as forming positive and respectful relationships with peers. Children should demonstrate trust with familiar adults and cooperation with their peers. They must also know when to seek guidance from adults and how to problem solve with their peers. It is with these skills that children will be best prepared to self-regulate and adapt to new situations. This work is happening this year specifically in our buildings, but also in our families' homes, because a lot of our families are also taking this charge as they engage in remote learning with students. This is a big charge for our teaching teams and families as we support our youngest learners, but I have every confidence that we will succeed. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. I see that we're a little bit ahead of schedule, and I was just wondering, perhaps we could take a couple of questions from audience members. If anybody has a question that they'd like to drop in the chat, feel free. I see we have somebody on the phone as well. The way you could unmute yourself on the phone, I believe, is
Star 6.
Star 6, right? Okay. Okay, doesn't look like we have any questions. So Cynthia, I will thank you so very much for your time and all of this incredible information. We are so lucky to have you in District 15. I'll look forward to speaking to you again in the near future, and best of luck with this new school year and all of your students.
Thank you. Thank you, Camille. Thank you very much. I'll stay for about another 10 minutes, but then we have to do our dismissal for our afternoon cohort because we started school today.
Absolutely. I totally understand. Thank you
Okay,
so much.
no problem.
So we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is social emotional learning. Last week, Chancellor Carranza had shared with the students that there are no words to express how heartbreaking this pandemic has been, and he thanked students and families for being so resilient. Many people are asking that we stay in remote learning until we have a vaccine. We all have undergone a traumatic experience. Some students have been diagnosed as depressed. There have been increases in food insecurity and homelessness. All of these difficult situations are made harder when students don't have the ability to interact with their peers or adults in the classroom. This is why, following the medical advice and with all the safety guidelines and protocols in place, the DOE has allowed for in-person learning where and when it's possible. The school year begins today, and there will be guidance counselors, social workers, and teachers engaging students with social emotional learning, trauma-informed practices, and they'll be connecting parents and families with online resources that you can find remotely. If your child is in a blended learning environment, they'll have in-person SEL. We know that this year won't be like other years, but what we do know is that the DOE will take a strong leadership role in the emotional support of our students. As parents, we must do our best to stay calm, ask questions, and as we get into the school year, there'll be a lot more answers. We are very fortunate today to have Dr. Susan M. Green with us. Dr. Green is the Senior Administrator of SEL and Design at the Department of Education's Office of Safety and Youth Development. Speaking with Dr. Green is Laura Johnson, the Program Manager for New York City at Sanford Harmony. We also have Ms. Yako Shituku on the call. She is the Implementation Specialist with Sanford Harmony. Sanford Harmony is an organization that recently partnered with the Department of Education. This social emotional learning program for pre-K to sixth grade students is designed to foster intergender communication and understanding, connection and community both in and outside the classroom, and develop boys and girls into compassionate and caring adults. You can learn more by visiting sanfordharmony.org. I will put that in the chat. And now I would like to welcome Dr. Green. Dr. Green, you have host privileges, so you are enabled. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I feel a little weird that I'm just seeing a bunch of names and everybody's profiles, and so it would be helpful to me if anybody would be so inclined. Hi, Laura, I see you. To just show me your face so I can kind of really feel like I'm actually engaging in some dialogue. Hi, Anne. Thank you. Hi, Haley. Thank you so much. So as Camille just shared, I come to you. Hi, Marcy. Thank you. Thank you guys for joining me. So I can feel like I'm talking to y'all. So I do come to you from the Office of Safety and Youth Development, but I also sit in that role as a former principal of 12 years. I used to be a principal in District 3. And so my hats go off to, of course, all of our school leaders, our teachers, and all of the support staff, and of course to our families and our parents, because we have gone through a tremendous time over the past 6 months, and life altering. And there's a poem, if I can find it, I will definitely share it with you guys, Camille, that none of us have experienced anything like this before. And so it's okay for us to be wherever we are in our emotions at any given time. It's the appropriate emotion for what we're feeling at that time. And so I'm grateful and I'm humbled to be in a place where I can support our schools around the city as it relates to social emotional learning initiatives. The Office of Safety and Youth Development, I can tell you, covers a wide gamut of areas when it comes to support for schools. Some of those areas, aside from social emotional learning, include our restorative justice. Kelly, why'd you go away? I appreciated seeing you. There you go. Stay with me.
Check on dismissal too.
Oh, I completely understand.
Just 1 second, I'll be right back.
No problem. Teasing. Not really. We oversee our restorative justices. So there's a lot of our schools across the city that also implement Restore 360. I personally support our LGBTQ manager. His name is Eric Vaughn. And so there's a lot of work that we know that has been done around LGBTQ and gender equity that's been happening. And so there's a lot of work. Comfort Dog program comes out of OSID. So there's a lot of things that are SEL related and kind of branch off in different directions that we support. And so with things that I don't have the answers to, I can certainly guide you to the person or people that do. Specifically for the work that I do, we focus on SEL, not only for our children, but also for our adults. And so it's my belief that we can't teach children something that we are not able to practice ourselves. And so the work around adult SEL is really important when it comes to actually understanding ourselves. And when we think about the CASEL competencies as it relates to social emotional learning, those being self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, social awareness, and relationship building, all of those things have to start with the individual. And I think when we can, as adults, can grow more and more comfortable understanding ourselves, understanding how we make decisions, why we make the decisions that we make, when those decisions are positive ones, when they're not, what type of things those decisions are rooted in, how have we been conditioned to think the way that we think, especially when we're talking about diversity, who we accept, who we don't accept, what are our biases, where they come from, what are the fears that we hold. When we can really get ourselves to engage in that internal work and have those internal difficult conversations, we equip ourselves better to be able to support children around the work of SEL and doing everything that we want them to do. And so I'm grateful for this partnership that the Department of Education has fostered with Sanford Harmony and the work that I've been able to do and the learning that I've been able to acquire in working with Sanford Harmony, because to teach these skills, and I can't tell you what it means to me when I'm able to visit schools across the city and I see young people being able to embrace Z. And I'm gonna let Laura and Yako talk a little bit more for those of you who are not familiar with who Z is. Hi, Moses. I don't know if it's Moses or somebody. Hi, Moses. Or somebody who's sitting in for Moses.
Yeah, he's my dad. Moses is my dad.
Hi, Moses's daughter.
Eleni, you can call me Eleni.
Okay, nice to meet you. When I can't tell you what it does for me to visit a school and to see young people in love with and embracing someone who is green and loving them and wanting to take care of them and do for them. And it just makes me wonder what happens to that innocence in young people and young humans as they begin to evolve, and how our society conditions them to discriminate against things that are different from them and that they don't understand. And so I think as we all work collectively to think about the role that we play to help young people to really shift the gamut when it comes to how we look at one another, how we engage one another. I think there's nothing better than being able to start that with young people, but then to be able to continue that work. And so Sanford Harmony and the curriculum that they provide, I think offer great scaffolds as the young people continue to evolve in the curriculum. And so at this point, we have approximately, I think we're close to at least 500 schools that have expressed an interest or are currently utilizing the Sanford Harmony program across New York City. And so that really brings excitement, because now we're talking about many people across the larger part of DOE having the same language when it comes to actually talking about this work that District 15 is doing as it relates to diversity and inclusion. And I would also go as far as speaking empathy. I think now we're in a time where we all need some empathy right now, because even regardless of how COVID and some of the social injustices that we see happening in our world right now, everybody is kind of looking at it from a different lens. But how do we now utilize something that we need and that we need from other people? How do we also position ourselves to extend it to other people as well? And so I'm open to answering any questions that anyone might have when it comes to anything in terms of SEL or the work that our office does, whether I take those questions now. But I would like to turn it over to Yako and Laura, who can speak more specifically about the Sanford Harmony program.
Great, thanks, Susan. You guys can see me here in my background. Susan was referring to Z. I don't know if you can see my finger pointing to Z, but Z is our alien friend that comes down to Earth and encounters his treehouse friends, which are standing all around him. And Z knows nothing about kindness or friendship. And we weave Z through all of our younger grade curriculum. And Z learns all about friendship and kindness through the treehouse friends. And the kids really do enjoy Z, and he's been adopted as the mascot of many of the schools around the district. So I'm actually gonna share my screen so that I'm able to provide everybody that isn't familiar with the Harmony program just an understanding of the components and the resources that are available to both teachers and educators, but as well as families. So I'm going to do that now. All right. If you could just give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen, then I won't talk without you being able to see what I'm doing. Great. Okay, so social emotional learning really is the process through which children as well as adults are acquiring and effectively applying the knowledge, attitudes, and skills that are necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. So why is it needed? Sort of a silly question right now when we think about kids transitioning back into the classroom, whether that's in person or remotely. The goal really is to provide that supportive, caring, positive environment where students feel safe, they feel accepted, and where they're able to really manage their emotions and generate academic success. And when we think about, as educators, the variety or the diversity of students in our classroom, SEL can really help to foster relationships between students that don't necessarily interact with each other, and really teach them to embrace their differences and also to talk about what they have in common or find out things that they have in common. So the Harmony program works because our goal really is intentional. It is to build relationships between students in the classroom and really to strengthen that learning community for students when they come into the school environment, whether that be virtual or in person. The goal, as Susan mentioned, is not only really for New York City, the school-wide climate, but really the district-wide climate, that we have resources to assist with response to intervention and some behavioral supports for students that are working on those areas. We are aligned to CASEL. We are a CASEL Select program, and we work around the country and in some areas around the world. And then we also have our online learning portal, which houses all of our strategies, stories, songs, lessons, and activities. And I'm going to give you a peek at that in just a minute. So the program itself is broken into two main components. The first being our everyday practices or strategies, and the second being lessons or the curriculum. The everyday practices has a few different pieces embedded in it. Our meetup, which is bringing students together in a group to interact with one another and to practice good social emotional behaviors. We have Harmony Goals, which is kind of the barometer for students and how they should treat one another in the classroom and their commitment to doing that. And then we have our Buddy Up, where students are paired weekly to help foster those relationships amongst them. And then with the lessons and activities, Students are working with their teachers, either in whole or small groups each week, to dive into some of the SEL competencies that Susan mentioned prior. So the Harmony goals are those group agreements, really where students are working together to come up with a list of behaviors or things they will do to ensure that they are treating one another with kindness and respect. And we do this to establish that positive behavior, to promote democracy and pro-social behavior, and then also to provide that structure and stability. So if every student knows what is expected of them in terms of how they're treating one another, that is going to help foster that. And Harmony goals are established in 4 easy steps. First, where students are discussing how they want to interact with one another. So this isn't something the teacher is dictating to the students. It's a conversation around, well, how should we treat each other? We should be kind. Okay, well, what does that mean? So really working together and then synthesizing those into 3 to 5 goals, where students are committing to those goals by signing the goals, and then they're posted in the classroom and referred to very regularly throughout the day and the week. You know, are we being respectful of one another? Are we being honest? Making sure that you're highlighting, you know, I saw that you helped your friend when their book bag spilled, and that was a really kind and respectful thing to do. So making sure that we're highlighting when students are successful, but also making sure that we're bringing the group together to problem solve when maybe there's opportunity to revisit those goals. Now the meetup and buddy up components really are intended to help build that student voice, their confidence, giving them the opportunity to share and empower them. It helps to promote equity and helps to develop student perspectives, and then just enhancing communication. Now with meetup, students are meeting in a group. Many times in the classroom, it becomes a part of what is typically seen as a circle time. And here you're monitoring those goals. So you're doing some check-ins around successes or areas for growth or opportunity around your goals. They're solving problems together, and they're doing some community building activities. So students will be meeting up really to help focus on those positive relationships, create that sense of belonging within that classroom community, building inclusion, enhancing communication for problem solving, and then fostering that empathy and understanding. So the steps of meetup are fairly straightforward. It starts with a routine or a greeting, and then gives the opportunity for a couple of the students to share, and really anything that they want to share. Maybe they did something fun over the weekend, or maybe they have an item that they've brought into class that they want to share, or maybe they want to talk a little bit about their favorite ice cream flavor, really whatever they want to talk about. And then other students within that circle will be able to ask some questions. So you told me over the weekend that you went on a hayride. Where did you go? How was it? Who did you go with? So really helping to develop those lines of communication as well. And then checking in on those Harmony goals, and then closing that meetup with a fun routine or community building activity. We have what we refer to as our quick connection cards, which is a deck of cards really intended to be used in this portion of meetup so that you don't have to come up with these ideas. We've come up with them for you. And if you look at these steps, you'll notice that these can very easily be translated into a virtual or remote learning environment. So we have many of our schools who have gone back to remote instruction that are very successfully using the meetup piece to really help build and foster that social emotional connection. So meetup is really where you're doing this as a whole group or a small group to help foster that classroom community. And buddy up is where you're pairing students together in buddies or in pairs to help engage them in brief activities or discussions. We also have quick connection cards that are intended for buddy up. So give some different prompts or some activities that the students can do together in pairs. The goal of buddy up is to bring diverse peers together who may not typically work with one another. Gives them the opportunity to not only discover those commonalities, but also to embrace their differences, and then helping to promote collaboration and empathy. So for buddy up, first you're going to start by just asking your students what makes a good buddy. Students will be buddied up weekly with a different buddy, so you'll assign those weekly buddies and keep track of them, and then you'll facilitate that activity. So fairly straightforward as well. And then the last piece of our programs, we've gone over those everyday practices, the meetup and the buddy up. For our lessons, here is where you're going to really be tapping into the curriculum components around those 5 focus themes of diversity and inclusion, empathy and critical thinking, communication, problem solving, and peer relationships. The program will include various units that have goals and objectives, research, the lessons and activities, as well as some homeschool connections. So educators that are on the call today, you'll find there's a lot of different resources in there, things that you can send home to families to help continue those conversations. And any family that's on the phone today, you'll also find that there are various resources, especially in our Harmony at Home pieces, that will help you to continue that work at home. So we've got some stories with our friend Z and activities, and then for our upper grades, instead of the stories, we have games and scenarios. So all of these resources are found in our online learning portal. And I'm gonna just briefly show you what that looks like. And Camille, please stop me if we're running over on time.
No, we're good. Keep
Okay.
going.
So here is our online learning portal, and you'll find that all of the resources you need to facilitate the program are housed within this dashboard. We've got our everyday practices over here. So you've got the step-by-step guide for establishing Harmony goals, either in the classroom, or you might find that families also would like to establish some Harmony goals at home around how they treat one another in their home environment. We've got our meetup, which can be done with a class or as a family, and then the buddy up where you're pairing students up with one another. Our quick connection cards, which will be used to facilitate these activities, are found in the online learning portal. And I'll pull up some just to give you an example of what these look like. You'll note that they're broken into 3 different groups. One is the community builders, which are used for your meetups or your class discussions and activities. And these are broken into 2 groups, early childhood for your younger students and upper grade for your older students. So if I click on these, you'll see each deck contains around 50 cards. They can be used more than once, and they can be used at different times during the day, depending on when you find it most effective to do a meetup. So if I go full screen, you'll see one example here. Describe and draw curved, straight, and zigzag lines on a paper or whiteboard. Challenge children to stand together and demonstrate the different figures. So there are a number of different cards in here. If you're working with students remotely, you might find that some lend themselves a little bit better to remote work, but for the most part, many of these can be utilized just as successfully online. So those are your community builders for your meetup activities, your whole group or your class activities. Then for your buddy up, your peers work, you've got collaborations cards where students are working together on an activity, or your conversations cards where they're discussing a prompt. So just to pull an example up here, we've got our early childhood deck. So design, create, and exchange bracelets with your buddy. This will also indicate what materials may be needed, but you might find that students can be extremely creative by just locating any materials that they have either in the classroom or at home. And then just to pull up an example of the conversations deck. If you were talking to someone younger than you, what would you tell him or her about being in this grade? So that's meant to be discussed between buddies. And many times you might find that then coming back together as the whole group and saying, you know, what did you guys discuss as a buddy? Was your answer the same? Did you find anything different? Or what did your buddy share? So helping them with those listening skills as well. One thing to note as I move around through the dashboard and through the portal here is that every resource within the online learning portal is also available in Spanish by simply clicking on the View in Spanish button. So when I click on that, it'll toggle these cards right to the Spanish version. So every resource that's available for students and educators is available in both English and Spanish. So those are your everyday practices, the meetup and the buddy up, as well as the Harmony goals. And then for the lessons and activities, you'll see that These are broken into 5 different units around the 5 focus themes. And then they're broken down into grade level bands. So you've got your pre-KK, grade 1 and 2, grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, and 6. And then there are some out of school resources here as well. Now within the lessons for your younger students, you will have your homeschool connections with a family letter and some home activities so that parents can support the learning at home with some different activities that are available. And then for the lessons themselves, you'll find all of the resources you need to facilitate that learning right in the lesson. So you've got a story here that can either be read by you or will provide the read along to the child. And then it'll let you know what materials you need, and it will allow you to facilitate the activity with various scripts. So here's just an example of one of the storybooks. So that is for your younger grades. So your pre-K through grade 2 has the storybooks included as well as the activities. And then for your grades 3 and up, you'll find that you have scenario-based activities as well as games. So in every lesson and every unit, you'll have those family letters and the family activities. And really, again, the main difference is that at the upper grade level, you'll have more scenario-based activities. You'll see here's a downloadable resource that students can write on. It's also available in Spanish. Okay, and then the last thing that I just wanted to show you before I wrap up is our distance learning. So as an organization, we recognize that many students are attending school remotely or in a hybrid model. Many of you as educators are teaching remotely or in a hybrid model. So there are a number of different resources in this distance learning package that provide some adjustments to the curriculum so that there can be facilitated in an online environment or to be supported at home. So I know we just had a very brief time to go over everything today. I hope you at least got a sense of what the resources look like. Certainly, as schools come on board and join the partnership, we provide a much more in-depth and thorough training.
Thank you so much. Dr. Green, Laura, and Jaco, it is such a great pleasure to have you on this call sharing all of this incredible information. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. I'm going to drop my email address. I've just been having a few conversations with folks, and I'm going to drop my email address in the chat. If there are schools or if there are schools that are interested in considering adopting Sanford Harmony as their SDL program, and I think this is important to say, whether you are looking to adopt a program from scratch or you're actually looking to supplement what you might already have existing within your school community, Sanford Harmony can definitely serve both purposes. And so if you're interested in learning more or want to participate in some upcoming trainings and adopt this program for this upcoming school year moving forward, we have a few more spaces available. And so we can put that information, I can put my contact information, we can talk with you offline.
Thank you, that would be great. So you'll drop that in the chat, right, you said? I'm also going to drop in the chat a link to a document that we put together with additional SEL support resources. So we'll just save a little bit of time of going through the line by line. But Saida, would you mind just doing the screen sharing for that SEL support resources, and I will move on to the next item of the agenda. But before that, I just want to give a shout out to our incredible District 15 Superintendent Anita Scott, who I see is on the call, and Deputy Superintendent Kelly McGuire, and our incredible D15 staff. Thank you so much for all of your support throughout these series and throughout the year, and always it's a great pleasure to be in District 15 working with so many committed people. So the next item on our agenda is about inclusive classrooms. I'm really excited to have Hallie Potter back with us again. Hallie is a senior fellow at the Century Foundation, where she researches public policy solutions for addressing educational inequity. She's an expert on school integration, preschool equity, charter schools, and college access. Ms. Potter has spoken at CEC 15 meetings in the past, and we're thrilled to have her join us again today to speak about the value of inclusive classrooms. Hallie, I'll hand the floor over to you.
Thanks so much, Camille, and thanks to CEC 15 for having me back again, and just a huge shout out to everyone who's on, parents and educators, doing everything we can to care for and educate our children in such unprecedented times. I know it's challenging, it's changing all the time, and it's exhausting. So I just want to share that appreciation, and appreciation that amidst all of that, that you've also found some time to join here. So I will talk about inclusive classrooms and why that's a value for our children, what we should be thinking about in these pandemic times as we're adapting. But I'm going to really focus my comments on talking about integrating students across different ability levels and what that means for thinking about how we plan academic coursework, which is has some resonances with talking about how we're serving special education students. But I just want to note that it's separate from thinking about the very particular issues of how we're serving students with IEPs. There are a number of good resources and so many questions that are coming up with how we are meeting students' needs and their IEPs in this context of the pandemic. And I would encourage you to look at includenyc.org as one place as a good resource to start with that. So I bet that if I had a poll, if I could ask the folks who are on the line now, if I ask you these two questions, I bet I know what most people would say. So the first question is, are you in support of having advanced academic opportunities for students? And the second question is, do you think it's important for students of different races and socioeconomic backgrounds to have the chance to learn together? And I would bet, partly because I'm confident from some national polling data, and also just from the individual conversations I've had, that the majority of you would answer yes to both of those questions. Those are values that most parents and educators want for all children. We want there to be academic challenge, and we want students to be able to learn in diverse settings. So I think we want to hold that up as a goal of figuring out ways to do both of those things. The problem is that we have set up a lot of education systems that end up putting those two things into conflict. And we know that because if we look at the data on how many students take AP courses, we see these huge gaps. Only 6% of Black students take any AP course in their academic career. Only 6% of American Indian students, and it's 12% of white students and 25% of Asian students. So really different realities for students across different groups. Similarly, low-income students are only a third as likely to have access to those advanced placement courses as students who are not low income. And we see this in other forms of advanced academic programs as well. We see it when we look at gifted programs. Black and Latinx students are underrepresented in gifted programs, and that's even if you control for prior achievement. So there might be questions about what types of opportunities and resources students have had to prepare them for entry into a gifted program or an advanced academic program. But even if you control for those things, you see there's still bias in who's getting that opportunity. This shows up in a lot of ways, specifically in New York City when we think about having gifted and talented classrooms or screen schools that have demographics that look really different from the rest of the school or from the rest of the district. And so I think we can all point to some examples. And the question then really is, if so many people resonate with the idea that we want academic challenge and we want diverse learning environments, how do we break out of this tension and come up with a better way so that we aren't forcing ourselves to choose? And the good news is that there are multiple models that schools have used that are really successful at providing academic challenge and bringing children together into diverse groups. And that means having classrooms that are diverse in terms of ability, students who are coming in from a wide range of prior academic achievement. And in many cases, that also means these are going to be places that are racially diverse and socioeconomically diverse, and all of those different axes of diversity and linguistically diverse. All of those can add richness to the education that our students receive. So just a couple of the big categories of ways that schools are doing this. One is by detracking, by leveling up. So that can mean you typically in a high school or middle school context, if you have honors classes or AP classes, some sort of leveling of the courses in the school. A school decides to make a commitment to say, we're going to take what was that advanced class that we were reserving for only the students that through whatever process, through teachers tapping, we think only you are ready for this challenge. What would it actually look like if we create a pathway to support all students to have honors English be the curriculum for everybody's English class. And schools have done this incredibly successfully and actually seen test scores even for their highest academic ability groups of students go up. Expanding access doesn't mean sacrificing quality. It's done in a way where teachers are supported and where there are individual supports for students as well. Another approach that schools have used, particularly more at the elementary school and middle school level, is something that's called a school-wide enrichment model. And that's typically an alternative to a traditional gifted and talented program where you have some students who are identified as, quote, gifted and some who are not identified, and there's a strict separation. School-wide enrichment model instead says, we want to encourage gifted behavior in everyone, and we're not going to label kids as gifted all the time or not gifted any of the time. Instead, we're going to talk about what it means to have gifted behavior. That means that students are showing above average ability and achievement in a particular area. It means they're showing above average creativity and extreme commitment to that task. And all students at some point are showing one of those elements in different types of their work. And we just want to encourage more of that. So it's taking some of the pedagogy of how gifted offerings are typically shaped and opening that up to everyone. It ends up being a really valuable tool. And then the third method that a lot of schools have used is something called open honors. And that means that, again, this is more of a middle school or a high school strategy where you would have had, say, a separate honors class and a standard class, or maybe, as many as 4 or 5 different level classes, depending on the school and district. Instead, there's an approach that says all students are going to take this class together, but students who want to have the option to take it for honors credit by completing extra assignments on a syllabus. And this has the advantage then of having students in classrooms where they are talking across ability and background, can benefit from really rich discussions, can benefit from exposure to the most challenging parts of the coursework, but also have differentiation so that students can opt into the different levels of challenge that really benefit them where they are. So what does all this mean in our pandemic times? I think there's bad news, but good news, and there are ways to adapt. The bad news, of course, is just that inequity is growing in so many ways, and part of how we're seeing this is the gulf in who has access to what types of learning right now. The small groupings that are required to make virtual learning successful, or for in-person learning where it's happening, the pods that some families are putting together, all tend towards a risk of grouping students along pretty narrow bands of ability. And we know from research that that tends not to support students best, that students actually really learn a lot more when they have the chance to interact with peers across a wide range of abilities. So some of those trends are especially concerning. But there's good news too, I think, as much as we can find, you know, a silver lining in that some of our education systems being broken means that we have a chance to rebuild them in a different way. Thinking about screening in New York City schools is actually one of those examples. District 15 has led the way in changing how middle school admissions happens, but there are still many other aspects of school admissions in New York that depend on a variety of different screens that in some way or another are going to have to be a little bit different this year. And there's a big question mark, but there's an opportunity to look at some of the sorting of students that has happened and think about some better ways to do it. And virtual learning has also opened up this chance to cross some of the gulfs within a school or even between schools that have been hard to do before. If we were thinking about how do we create rich integrated spaces for our children, if you're an educator or a teacher at school, I'd encourage you to think about, is there an opportunity that ways that your students could connect during this time with students who are coming from different backgrounds than they are in a way that might not have been possible. Maybe there's some pairing across schools that can happen, or similarly across different programs within a school or across grades. And it's also possible to adapt a lot of these strategies to the current times. So a number of schools that have done an open honors model, for example, they're continuing that now with virtual learning. They're still taking this same approach that students are, you know, in a class together, whether that means they're, you know, in a Zoom room together, but the syllabus has these options on there for students who want the honors challenge. And that's something that can really adapt well to this virtual setting. So I think as parents and educators are thinking about these questions, I'd just say that I think it's important to consider as we're trying to figure out how children are getting what they need right now, that we're finding ways for students to connect with other students across different ability levels. We know that that's really important. And part of that is thinking about how you yourself talk about differences across ability and encouraging your child or encouraging your students to notice and reflect on the differences in ability that they see among their peers and what are some of the opportunities that that creates to have positive conversations. And to ask yourself the question, are there any aspects of our school or my child's education that feel right now like they are really siloed or segregated, perhaps by ability, and that might also play out to create other kinds of segregation around race or socioeconomic status. And if that's the case, if there are any of those places, think about what could a solution be to build some greater connection and integration in those spaces. Again, with the way that we're adapting education right now, it might mean trying something different, but in a way it might be easier to create that kind of connection when it means pairing up to classes that have been meeting via Zoom, and the logistics of that might actually be easier than they have been in some other times. And lastly, I would just make a plug too. The DOE is still figuring out what it's going to look like to have a process for screen schools this fall. And if that is something that is an issue that you care about, I would encourage you to speak up, because they need to hear from teachers, and they need to hear from parents about what makes sense for equity in this time. So I know we're already over. I apologize for pushing us over, but thank you, Camille, again, for the opportunity to chat. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much, Haley. It's always great to hear you speaking. So inspirational. Really, really very happy that you were able to join the call and appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Yes, we are a few minutes over. So I will just remind everybody that our next session is going to be on October 5th. So we're going to skip a week, and that will be about the formative years, the influence of parents, teachers, and first friendships. So in closing, I just want to thank everybody who's taken the time to be on this call today. It's so fantastic to have the variety of school community members. I see so many people, parents, teachers, paras, staff, support staff, district staff, and it's just fantastic. So we will post all of this information on our cecd15.org website, and can't wait for the next session. So thank you again for your time today and for your support of District 15 schools. Have a wonderful day, everyone.